Welcome back to Just Chattin', and this is the series of videos we do on Thursday and Sunday evenings just for our own entertainment. So for all you Audie fans, Audie is outside playing right now. I usually film these videos a few hours before they post, so it's about 3 o'clock Thursday evening, and it rained earlier today. So it's not very dark out, it's still light. He wants to be out playing, but it rained earlier today, so he didn't get his chance to play outdoors. And I think he's trying to make up for it now. But because it rained, it'll be wet, and he doesn't like getting his paws wet because, you know, he's a cat, and they're so prissy about their little paws. So I expect he's going to be back shortly. Therefore, yes, he might yet show up before the end of the video. But since we don't have much in the way of Audie news, I thought we would just jump right in to our bit of nutmeg news for this evening. And nutmeg, after a year, 2 company names, a change of CEOs, several scuffles with the trademark office, finally actually got some of her product out on the market. Yes, jam. Well, what she calls spread, but yeah, whatever it takes to be special and different, right? And apparently it all sold out. Now, no one has said how much of the product was made available in the first place, because if there were 4 million jars put out on the market, selling them all out within an hour would be something. On the other hand, if there were a couple thousand jars, not so much. So do I think we're ever going to get an answer to that? Absolutely not. But we did get a little post from her saying, "The shelves are empty, but my heart is full." Yeah, sure, so's her pantry, I have no doubt. Because as we will all recall from her 40 by 40 video, remember this? And this was at the point where she was hawking that ridiculous little piece of drivel she wrote as a children's book. We know where all the books ended up. She had them stacked in her living room, using them as bolster chairs for her laptop. So, where do I think these jam jars have gone? Yep, Nutmeg's pantry. So, I think this is interesting. The truth is, I wish her all the luck in the world with this. I would like nothing better than to see this woman succeed as a social media influencer. I think that's about the only talent she has, assuming she even has talent for that. But I would like it very much if she would confine her activities to Instagram so the rest of us could simply ignore her and get on with our lives. Am I holding my breath? No. But I am hopeful. All right, we're going to take a look at the intro. We're going to be back in a few seconds and get started. So, since we last got together, Dr. Sophie Chandauka, the chairperson of the Sentebale charity in Lesotho and Botswana, Africa, has given out an interview, and this was to Sky News. I watch Sky News. I like some of their moderators very much. So, she gave out an interview to them. The interview, and of course, as with all my sources, linked in the video description below. So if you want to check it out, go check it out. Also, let me quickly say the Royal Grift did a blow-by-blow evaluation of this interview over on her channel. Definitely worth taking a look at, too. But I think in this interview, she answered a great many questions that we all had about what was going on. Certainly it's questions I had about what was going on with the sock puppet and the Sentebale charity. Now, interestingly enough, she answered the questions by not answering them. And anybody who knows lawyers knows that that's how you get your information from them. It's not what they say as much as it's what they don't say. But I am pretty confident at this point that we now have the real lay of the land. So, Dr. Sophie, and this, I do not mean that to be disrespectful, I'm just quite certain I am mispronouncing her last name, so don't read anything into this. Dr. Sophie had been involved with the charity almost from the beginning. I believe the charity was founded in 2006, and she was a trustee on the board by 2008 or 2009. She was there for about 6 years, which is the normal term for a person on a board of trustees. That's to be expected. And then she left the board. These are voluntary positions. She didn't get any compensation for any of this. And then came back again as chairperson. And that was in 2023. No compensation. Again, got to stress that. So she has no financial stake in this game. If she is holding on to this position, it has to be because her commitment is based on some reason other than lining her own pocket. Just that simple. Now, I would assume, and this is just an assumption, that her reason is that as a Zimbabwean woman, a Black African woman from this part of the world, she has a personal interest in the success of this charity. It's the only thing that really makes any sense, and I see no reason that anyone would deny that her commitment is genuine, because she's giving of her time and her resources. Not only is she not getting any money, but it's got to be costing her one way or another, because she is a corporate attorney. I can only guess what her time bills out for. So, and it's got to be high, you know. So yeah, I have to assume that she's doing this from her heart. And the woman has never said or done anything so far to indicate to me that she doesn't deserve that benefit of the doubt. So, pulling out of that, that is the backstory on Sophie. The sock puppet claims to be the founder of this organization, and we all know this is not true. The sock puppet could not possibly be the founder of this organization. First of all, when the organization began, he was in his very early 20s. He has no education, no experience, and frankly, he just does not have the intellectual wherewithal to even know where to begin. The standard operating procedure within the royal family is when somebody wants to start a charity. I would like to start a charity. There's a whole fleet of people who put it all together for them. They make sure the paperwork is done and that everything ticks off as it should, because they don't want the royal family involved in anything sketchy or anything that's likely to blow up at some future date in a court of law. Did he found it? Absolutely not. And I'm so tired of this. They are making this guy sound like he did anything besides, act as the spokesmodel for it. And that is all he has done. He is not the founder of the charity. And we need to pull the plug on that right now. Whoever did it, it was probably an administrator working out of Buckingham Palace. So, nevertheless, he is the patron of the organization. And as I just said, that's pretty much like being a spokesmodel. No one who is the patron of an organization, and by the way, we don't have that sort of thing here in the U.S. Usually we have with high-profile organizations, we will have a certain number of celebrities who lend their names to it. So, such and such movie star will be, the chairperson of the 2025 March of Dimes campaign, something like that. We know that this is not their day job. We know they are not involved in the day-to-day workings of the organization. But when it comes to patron, because we don't use the term itself is a little confusing and opaque to us. I'm sure our British friends who are more familiar with the term have no expectation that any patron of any organization is actually involved in the day-to-day running of that organization. The Princess of Wales, for example, Catherine, is the patron of military regiments. I don't think anybody believes that what that means is if the regiment is ever called up to fight, that somebody is going to be slapping a gun in her hand saying, "Go on out there, Kate, and shoot the enemy." No, that's not how it works. There's no expectation that any of these people who are patrons of organizations are doing anything beyond lending their name and their prestige to the organization, period. Except maybe Camilla. I do, in fact, expect that Camilla might well be on the phone if she thinks one of her organizations is getting short shrift and demanding that people set it right. But in case you hadn't noticed, I get most of my Camilla news from watching Tracy Ullman. So that's where my Camilla stuff comes from. But the truth is, I don't even think Camilla is getting on the phone yelling at anybody on behalf of her organizations. It's just not what their position is. Their position is simply lending their name and their prestige to the organization. That's it. Apparently, the problem that Dr. Sophie and Harry the Sock Puppet had was a conflict between what the sock puppet's actual position was, which is non-existent. This is a made-up title. The patron means nothing. Founder didn't happen. And what his authority in the organization actually was. Because what was happening, if you listen to Dr. Sophie, is the sock puppet was treating Sentebale like his own little fiefdom. He would walk in, and this is a direct quote, please watch the interview. He would walk into meetings. Okay, it's not a direct quote, I'm paraphrasing. He would walk into meetings saying things like, "I want this person placed on the board of trustees effective immediately." Like, what? That's not what a patron does. That's not what anyone does. That doesn't happen in the real world. Any organization like Sentebale is going to have a very fixed protocol for adding members to the board of trustees. There is usually a limited number, or if it's not a limited number, it's not, say, anywhere up to 9 trustees, there will usually be language indicating an odd number so that you don't have deadlock voting, things like that. It has to be done through a process, but that's not what was happening. The sock puppet was walking in saying, "This is my friend, I want him on the board." And then his other friends on the board would immediately say, "Yeah, I second. Yeah, me too. Hey, welcome on board." Why? Because they probably all got there exactly the same way. So he was stalking the board of trustees with his friends, doing it in a completely inappropriate way. So according to the rules governing the Sentebale charity, these were not even legal appointments. It's just happening. And it was happening because he was walking in saying, "This is what I want." And the other people who had been placed on the board, undoubtedly in exactly the same way, were going along with it. Now, let's go back to Dr. Sophie. She's an attorney. meaning she knows the difference. She knows this is not supposed to be happening. It can't be happening when a charity is run like this by one individual who just walks in and says, this is what we're doing. See you later. You don't have a responsible charity. You don't have a charity to which people will donate money. This is a disaster. And it's hard to overstate the extent of this disaster. Now, Sophie, in her interview, did not overstate it. She just laid out the facts. I assume she was doing this in the belief that there would be enough of us out there with enough of a knowledge of corporate governance to say, holy crap, he did not do that. Well, yeah, apparently he did. Should she have blown the whistle on this? Abso-freaking-lutely. Absolutely. No two ways around it. This cuts to the very core of how the organization is run. And if it's being run by one person who simply walks into the room and says, give me what I want or else, which seems to be what the sock puppet was saying, you don't have a legitimate charity. British government should shut that charity down, period. If that can be proven to be what has happened, they need to fire the entire board of trustees and start fresh, because this is an absolutely egregious abuse. Well, I was going to say abuse of power, but there's no legitimate power that a patron has. The patron does not get involved in the running of the organization. That's why this is the role that is played by the British royal family. Remember, they don't do this. They're not political. They have no interest in the running of any of these organizations. They are a step removed. Their hands must always be clean. Can you imagine what it would be like if British charities in general were run in this way? If Camilla really could pick up the phone and start yelling at people, saying, do it my way or the highway. Wow. I mean, first of all, it throws the charity into such a state of disrepute. But it also tarnishes the image of the royal family. So, yeah, I think that is huge. And I don't think anybody has been paying anywhere near enough attention. Just that one charge alone, that he was stacking the board of trustees, that he would just walk in and say, put this guy on the board, and effective immediately. That is a direct quote. And that person would be on the board before the end of that particular meeting. Good Lord. Okay, that's terrible. That should shut the charity down, period. So, in addition to this, which she is not happy about, because again, like I say, she's a lawyer, she knows better. She understands where this can lead, where this inevitably will lead. Then, of course, we have the issues of the sock puppet materially interfering with charity business for his own benefit. And that is the April 2024 polo match, when he decided he was bringing Netflix in to film this polo match, which was allegedly taking place for a Sentebale fundraiser. But he brings in Netflix. Well, now we've got Netflix. We've got Netflix money. Dr. Sophie's concern was that no one had signed up for this. It hadn't been a commercial venture. Now, whether or not anybody had signed up for it, that's her concern. That would not in particular be my concern. My concern would be the issue of conflating a charitable activity with a commercial activity, and how do you tease them apart? My concern would be the money. Why? Because it's taking place in the United States. And because in the United States, you have to be extremely careful. Charity, commerce. You don't conflate the two. You try to conflate the two and you have problems. I have no idea what this is like in the UK, where this charity is registered, or in Africa, where Dr. Sophie is an attorney. So what is ringing bells for her is probably not ringing bells for me, and vice versa. I'm seeing payment to the sock puppet, and the sock puppet bringing the film crew in because Netflix is paying him, filming the polo match, which is allegedly for the benefit of a charity. That's where I'm seeing the line crossed. So I would have to say that based on the fact that her take is a little different than mine, and we are in the realm of international charity law, and I am by no means an expert on this, by no means, I would have to say that, yeah, this could be highly problematic. And the fact that he took the charitable enterprise of the Sentebale polo match, flipped it commercially for Netflix, and heaven only knows who made what money out of this and whether or not there's even been an accounting yet. No one's saying. No one is saying. The fact is, it's dirty. It's absolutely dirty. And you just don't want that. If you are the chairperson of a charity, you do not want even the appearance of impropriety. And this is beyond the appearance of impropriety. Harry himself was paid by Netflix. So we're way beyond mere appearance. This is absolute impropriety. You don't want that on your watch. I don't blame her. And I would have to say between these two incidents, and this is all she actually cited, frankly, she could have cited half that, and I still would have said this charity needs to be shut down. So, what do I think is going to happen? Frankly, I think that the UK governing board of charities, whoever they are, I think they're going to look at this and say, absolutely not. And that this is completely inappropriate, that the sock puppet was exceeding his role as patron, which he only did when he wanted something out of it. Because remember, from the time he left the UK at Megxit until the time he next showed up in Sentebale was like 5 years. So he had ignored the charity for the first 5 years while he was off in Disneyland, playing on the beaches of Montecito. Sentebale wasn't even a footnote for him. When it turned out it might be useful, when he saw a way, or perhaps somebody else saw it for him, and that seems more likely, to turn the Sentebale charity into a means for him to get his polo hobby financed. Yeah, hey, we're right back there. When he wanted to put members on the board of trustees, payoffs for his friends, one has to conclude. I just do not see any other reading of that. This is my friend, I want him on the board, vote him on. That's dirty. That is dirty. When he wanted something from them, he's Johnny on the spot. But for 5 years, they were in the back of his closet somewhere. He didn't even take them out and dust them off. So, and we know this because we kept hearing the story of that little girl in Lesotho. And she had, well, I'm not going to go into the details of what her story was because YouTube doesn't like that sort of thing. But she was a little girl who had a hard time. And he promised that he would take care of her. And apparently, after the photo op, after the newspapers published that story about him making the promise to the little girl. She never saw him again. So we know this is what was happening. With what we're looking at now, because, as I say, now Dr. Sophie has come out with a couple of concrete instances with details. Yes, we have a major problem. Is it the sock puppet? Abso-freaking-lutely. This is not something that can be blamed on the Board of Trustees, although the Board of Trustees absolutely played their part if they humored this nonsense. But it's the sock puppet. The fact is that, according to Dr. Sophie, many of the members of the Board of Trustees had been serving for 10, 12, up to 20 years. That's not the way a Board of Trustees works. Remember when we started and I said she was on the Board of Trustees and she had been on the board for, I believe it was something like 6 years, and I said that's an appropriate length of time? That is an appropriate length of time. Most organizations have term limits for Board of Trustee members, and you will have they can go for maybe 4 2-year terms, 2 4-year terms, whatever. Usually it is a period of time under 10 years. And again, every organization has the right to set up their own board the way they want to. So this is just a generality. But usually it is a relatively short period of time, and the seats on the board are staggered so that some members will leave, some members will come in, and there'll be an overlap of existing members to get the new members on board, and that's usually how it goes. No, apparently not with this board. Apparently with this board, if you're a friend of the sock puppets, you've got your position guaranteed to you for life. Again, highly, highly problematic. So when I looked at Dr. Sophie's most recent statements, and again, I'm looking at this from the point of view of someone with a small understanding of corporate governance. I am not an expert, but I'm not a novice either. I've been involved in many, many organizations, and I can tell you that charitable organizations in particular go very far out of their way to ensure that everything is above board, because they know that is the only thing donors have to give them confidence in the organization. That's what you need to be able to present to your donors. We have an organization. We follow the rules. No one has ever made a complaint about us because we dot our I's and cross our T's. That's what a donor looks for. Highly, highly irregular. So what do I think is happening? Well, I think obviously we are hearing details of Dr. Sophie's complaints. Are they valid? Oh my God, yes. If this is actually happening, yes, yes, yes. And again, let me just throw this out to my British friends, because you have members of your royal family patronizing organizations. Can you picture any of them going in to one of the charities for which they are the patrons saying, put my friend on your board? You know, I'm going to have a polo match and I want Netflix to come, and can you imagine that? That is not how it works. Dr. Sophie did mention something else interesting. And this is something that I throw this in as a footnote only, that from virtually the moment that the sock puppet left the UK in Megxit, donations started dwindling. The donations they were getting, which probably were in large part from the UK, when he left, started drying up. I consider that largely a footnote, because that, I think, was the normal and predictable consequence of the sock puppet leaving the royal family, not to mention all of his actions following that served to alienate the British public from him big time. It alienated huge swaths of the American public from him as well. But yeah, that was to be expected. I would have been surprised if it hadn't happened. Do I think that in light of this, they need to consider new funding sources? Absolutely. Do I think they need to consider finding themselves a new patron? All I can say is, Dr. Sophie, I hope someone's willing to give you William's phone number, because you don't just need a new patron. After this, you are going to need a new patron who is so squeaky clean as to be able to make up for what the sock puppet's been doing. So yeah, William, maybe Catherine, who knows? But maybe she will be able to find another patron from within the royal family. That would be good for the charity. And I think, quite frankly, the fact that the sock puppet resigned was probably the kindest thing he ever did for this organization. All right, so that is what I have for you today. Like I say, it was right out there in the interview. I think it would have been better for the public interest if Dr. Sophie had thrown it out and hammered it home. She's an attorney, and she's not going to do that. That's just not how attorneys make their case. They throw it out and leave it to us to let the wheels turn and figure out what's going on for ourselves. Well, yeah, it ain't a pretty picture. All right, well, I have to go figure out where my naughty cat is, because he's probably still outside whimpering about wet grass on his clean paws. We are going to take a look at a slideshow on the way out. I hope to see you all next time. And in the meanwhile, have a terrific day.